I stepped into Dad's kitchen and stopped cold. My brother Trent sat at the table with two of his buddies, literally counting Dad's cash. Stacks of 20s and 50s were spread out like poker chips from some twisted game. The morning light caught the bills as his fingers moved through them with practiced ease. Dad walked in behind me, his confused shuffle making my heart sink. Without missing a beat, Trent shoved half the cash into a grocery bag and looked up at Dad with perfect innocence. "Dad, looks like Monica misplaced the rest again." My mouth went dry as Dad's confused stare cut right through me. I didn't argue or defend myself. Instead, I quietly reached for my phone because the security system I'd installed 3 weeks ago had just uploaded the entire scene to my cloud storage. Every word, every movement, every damning second. A hot wave flooded my chest, but it wasn't anger. It was clarity, sharp and clean. Trent was framing me right in front of Dad, and those two friends smirked like they were watching some comedy show. One of them, Kyle, actually snickered. "Chicks can't handle money, man. It's science." Dad's voice came out soft and wounded. "Monica, again?" he whispered. I placed my keys down on the counter calmly, forcing my hands to stay steady. "Is that what he told you?" Trent folded the grocery bag closed with exaggerated care, his face painted with fake sadness. "She's overwhelmed, Dad. Women get emotional under stress. It's not her fault she can't keep track of things." The words landed like stones. Dad nodded slowly, his tired eyes filled with something worse than anger. Belief. He believed Trent without question, and my brother knew it. That moment crystallized everything I'd suspected for weeks. My own brother wasn't just careless with Dad's money. He was calculating, methodical, and viciously cruel. I'd moved back home 8 months ago when Dad started forgetting appointments and burning pots on the stove. I gave up my paralegal career, my apartment in Belmont, my entire independent life. I handled the medications, paid the bills, sat through the sleepless nights when he wandered confused. Trent handled the praise from relatives who called him the dutiful son. He'd show up once a week with takeout, smile for an hour, then disappear back to his bachelor life. But somewhere along the way, he'd started seeing Dad as something else. Not a father who needed care, but a resource to exploit. And me, I was just the spinster sister playing nurse, too emotional and incompetent to handle real responsibilities. My name is Monica Delton, and I'm 48 years old, single, childless, and apparently too stupid to manage money, according to my younger brother. Never mind that I'd spent 15 years as a senior paralegal at Hutchinson & Cole, managing complex litigation finances and trust accounts. Never mind that I'd never bounced a check in my life. In Trent's world, and increasingly in our family's eyes, I was just the unmarried older sister who never quite figured life out. Dad's doctor had diagnosed mild cognitive impairments 6 months earlier. Not quite dementia, but heading that direction. Someone needed to be there full time. Trent certainly wasn't volunteering. He had his electronics store job, his poker nights, his dating apps. I had nothing but Dad, according to family gossip. "At least Monica has a purpose now," Aunt Francine had said at Sunday dinner. The pity in her voice had stung worse than any insult. The theft started small. 3 weeks after I moved in, Dad asked why the grocery money felt lighter than usual. He'd pulled out his wallet to pay for lunch, counted the bills twice, and looked confused. "I thought I had $200, he'd said quietly. I brushed it off as a simple mistake. Maybe he'd bought something and forgotten. But that night, after Dad went to bed, I found his wallet tucked behind the couch cushions. Only $80 remained. When I asked Trent about it the next day, he'd shrugged with that infuriating casualness he'd perfected. Maybe Dad misplaced some bills. Happens all the time at his age, right? You're there full-time, Monica. You should keep better track. The implication hung in the air like smoke. This was somehow my failure, my responsibility, my fault for not watching closely enough. That's when I started paying closer attention to the small disappearances around the house. Installing the security cameras had been Trent's idea, ironically. He'd suggested it during Sunday dinner 2 weeks later, saying Dad needed protection from potential break-ins. With Monica there alone with him, we need to make sure they're safe. Women living alone can be targets. Dad had agreed immediately, trusting his son's concern. I'd handled the actual installation, setting up 4 cameras covering the main living areas, hallways, and Dad's bedroom. What Trent didn't know was that I'd configured the system to send motion alerts directly to my phone with automatic cloud backup. My paralegal training had taught me documentation was everything. 2 weeks after installation, I sat in the pharmacy parking lot waiting for Dad's prescriptions when my phone buzzed. Motion detected in Dad's bedroom, 2:14 p.m. I opened the alert and watched live footage of Trent sitting on Dad's bedroom floor with Kyle and another friend, Jake. They were counting thick bundles of cash pulled from Dad's dresser drawer. My thumb hovered over the save button as Kyle's voice came through clearly. "Dude, $800 just sitting there. They'll never know it's missing." Trent's laugh made my blood run cold. "Old people don't track anything. Dad forgets what he had for breakfast. You think he's counting his cash?" They divided the money into 3 piles with businesslike efficiency, each taking several $100s before carefully replacing the remaining bills in Dad's drawer. Jake looked nervous. "What if your sister notices?" Trent's response was immediate and confident. "Monica, she's a 48-year-old woman still living with Daddy. Obviously failed at life. Dad won't believe her over me." Kyle laughed. "Truth. Women can't handle pressure. That's why they need men to manage the real stuff." My hands shook with rage, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. I saved the footage, backed it up to 3 separate cloud accounts, and locked my phone. Knowledge was power, and timing was everything. That night, Trent sent me a text that made my blood run cold. "Dad thinks you mixed up the bills again. You should talk to him. Maybe this caretaking thing is too much stress for you." 20 minutes later, Dad appeared in my doorway looking troubled. "Sweetheart," he started carefully, "Trent mentioned you've been distracted lately. Are you feeling okay?" The question stabbed deeper than any direct accusation. "My bills are all current, Dad. Everything's organized in the spreadsheets I showed you." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. "He showed me some paperwork earlier. It was confusing, but he said there were issues with payments." My stomach dropped. "What paperwork?" Dad gestured vaguely toward the kitchen table, where a manila folder sat. Inside, I found payment notices, late fees, and bounce check notifications for utilities, credit cards, property taxes. Every single one had been caused by insufficient funds in accounts that should have had plenty of money. Accounts Trent had been systematically draining while building a paper trail that pointed straight at me. The next evening, Trent arrived with another folder and a concerned expression that would have won awards. He placed the documents on the coffee table like a prosecutor unveiling evidence. "Monica, I think you need help," he said softly, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "These financial mistakes are getting serious. Dad could lose the house." He turned to Dad with practiced solemnity. "I hate to say this, but women at a certain age, especially unmarried women without life partners to help them cope with stress, they can become overwhelmed. It's not her fault, it's just biology." Dad looked at the papers, then at me, confusion mixing with fear in his eyes. The bills were real, the problems were genuine. Only the source was a lie. "Maybe," Dad whispered, his voice breaking my heart, "maybe you shouldn't manage the money anymore. Trent's good with numbers. He runs a business." My brother's smile was barely hidden behind his hand. Within days, relatives started calling with voices full of gentle concern. "Just checking on you, Monica. We heard things have been stressful." Aunt Francine called from Portland with carefully chosen words. "Honey, there's no shame in admitting when something's too much. Trent mentioned the bill problems. Maybe you need a break?" Uncle Wallace texted from Denver. "Your brother's worried about you. Says you seem confused lately. Everything okay?" Even Dad's sister in Florida reached out. "Monica, dear, Trent says you've been making mistakes with the finances. At your age, stress affects women differently. Have you considered therapy?" The narrative Trent had crafted was perfect because it contained just enough truth to be believable. I was stressed. I was handling everything alone. I was an unmarried middle-aged woman living with her father. In their eyes, that made me pathetic and incompetent. But I wasn't making mistakes. I was being systematically destroyed by someone who saw Dad's declining memory as an opportunity and my gender as a weakness. Another notification came while I was making Dad's lunch. I opened it immediately, heart pounding. This time Trent wasn't taking cash. He was sitting in Dad's bedroom with Kyle and Jake again. But instead of counting money, they were talking strategy. If Dad hands over the accounts to me, I'll fix everything before she completely ruins it, Trent said, leaning back against the dresser. Then we can really access the big money. Dad's got $180,000 in savings alone. Jake whistled low. That's serious cash, Kyle grinned. What if Monica finds out what you've been doing? Trent's response was chilling in its confidence. She won't. And even if she suspects something, who's Dad going to believe? His son who's trying to help, or his spinster daughter who never managed to get her own life together? She's just playing nurse because she has nothing else. They laughed together. Women get emotional and paranoid under stress, Jake added. Everyone will just think she's having a breakdown. I saved the video and continued making Dad's sandwich with hands that barely trembled anymore. I waited until Trent came by the next afternoon, then showed him a still image from the bedroom footage on my phone. His face didn't change at all. No surprise, no guilt, nothing. You're spying on Dad's bedroom? He said with manufactured disgust. That's creepy, Monica. Really disturbing. This is exactly the kind of paranoid behavior I've been worried about. I kept my voice level despite the rage burning in my chest. You stole from him. With your friends. $800 3 weeks ago. He stepped closer, invading my space with practiced intimidation. No one will believe you. Dad thinks you're losing it, and frankly, everyone agrees. You're a stressed-out middle-aged woman living in her childhood bedroom. You're paranoid enough to put cameras in your father's private space. How does that look? His confidence was absolute, built on months of careful manipulation and societal prejudice. That's when Dad walked in, his timing perfect for Trent's purposes. My brother's expression shifted instantly, from threatening to concerned. Trent pivoted smoothly, turning my evidence into my crime. Dad, thank goodness you're here. Monica just admitted she put cameras in your bedroom. In your most private space. She's been watching everything you do. Dad's face went pale, but not with anger at Trent. He stared at me with something worse than disappointment. Betrayal. Why would you do that, Monica? He asked quietly. I fought to keep my composure as my world tilted. For your safety, Dad. Remember? We talked about it after Trent suggested security cameras. You agreed. But Dad's eyes were clouded with doubt and confusion. He didn't remember the conversation clearly, and Trent knew it. Cameras in common areas make sense, Trent said reasonably, his voice full of brotherly concern. But the bedroom? That's invasive, Dad. I think Monica's stress is affecting her judgment. Women without families of their own sometimes become overly attached. It's not healthy. Dad nodded slowly, and I watched my authority crumbling. I think Trent should help more with the finances, Dad said finally. He's a businessman. He understands these things. Trent scheduled a meeting with Dad's lawyer the following week, supposedly to streamline estate management and protect Dad's assets from my supposed incompetence. I wasn't invited to the planning discussion, only informed afterward that my presence would be expected. The message was clear. I was being removed from control, and Trent was positioning himself as the responsible son stepping in to save Dad from his daughter's failures. But the lawyer, Vincent Torres, had known Dad for 23 years. He'd handled Dad's will, his property transfers, and every legal document since Mom died. He'd also known me since I was 25 and had watched me build my paralegal career. That's why Vincent called me privately 2 days before the meeting. Monica, he said carefully, I need you to know that Trent has painted a very concerning picture. He's suggesting you're experiencing some kind of breakdown. Before this meeting happens, I think you and I should talk. Today, if possible. I drove to his office that afternoon with my phone full of saved videos and a determination that surprised even me. Vincent's office smelled like old books and expensive coffee. I sat across from his massive oak desk and pulled out my phone without preamble. I need you to watch something, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. He adjusted his glasses and leaned forward as I hit play on the first video. The cash counting scene filled the small screen, crystal clear in its damning detail. Vincent's expression tightened with each passing second, his jaw setting harder as he watched Trent and his friends dividing Dad's money like casino dealers splitting tips. When the audio came through clearly, "They'll never know it's missing." Vincent actually flinched. "This changes everything," he said quietly when the clip ended. His eyes met mine with new respect, or perhaps respect that had been there all along but was now justified. "Do you have more?" I did. I showed him 6 additional clips, each one adding another layer to Trent's systematic theft and manipulation. Vincent sat back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin as the final video ended. "Monica, I need to tell you something. Your brother came to see me 3 days ago. He brought documentation of financial errors and suggested you were experiencing severe stress, possibly early-onset dementia, given your age and unmarried status. He actually cited studies about childless women over 45 having higher rates of cognitive decline." His voice carried barely controlled anger. He was very convincing. If you hadn't come to me with this evidence, I might have believed him. I felt sick. "What did you tell him?" Vincent smiled slightly, that I needed to review everything carefully before any changes were made. He left thinking he'd won. He pulled out a legal pad and started making detailed notes. "These videos are time-stamped and backed up?" I nodded. 3 separate cloud accounts, plus local storage on my phone and laptop. All of them show continuous footage with no editing gaps. He looked impressed. "You should have been a lawyer instead of a paralegal. This is exactly the kind of meticulous documentation that wins cases." We spent the next hour planning the meeting strategy down to the smallest detail. Vincent would request Trent's presence along with Dad, supposedly to discuss Dad's estate planning and implement the changes Trent had requested. Trent would think he was walking into a coronation, a meeting designed to officially remove me from financial control and install him as the responsible party. Instead, he'd walk into an ambush built from his own words, his own actions, his own arrogant confidence that no one would believe a stressed-out spinster over a successful son. "I'm also going to request something else," Vincent said. "I want you to bring detailed financial records showing your actual competence, bank statements from your previous accounts, performance reviews from Hutchinson and Cole, anything that shows you're not the incompetent woman Trent's portrayed." I smiled for the first time in weeks. I kept everything. Vincent stood and walked me to the door. "Monica, come to the meeting, but don't say anything unless I ask you directly. Let me handle everything." He paused at the door. "And watch your brother's face when he realizes he's walked into a trap." The night before the meeting, Dad seemed distant and confused. He kept looking at me like he was trying to remember something important, but couldn't quite grasp it. Trent, meanwhile, practically glowed with confidence. He showed up for dinner wearing his best shirt and a silk tie, talking about responsibility and family obligations like he was rehearsing a speech. "Tomorrow's going to be good, Dad," he said, patting Dad's shoulder with exaggerated affection. "We're going to fix everything and make sure you're protected. No more financial chaos. No more stress on Monica. I'll handle everything." Dad nodded gratefully, completely unaware of what protection really meant. I tucked Dad into bed that night, making sure his water glass was full and his medications were organized for morning. "Everything will be clear soon," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "I promise you'll understand everything." From the hallway, Trent smirked at me like he'd already won. Let him feel confident, I thought. Let him walk in tomorrow expecting victory. Pride comes before the fall, and tomorrow, Trent was going to fall so hard he'd never get up. Vincent's conference room felt cold, despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Dad sat at the head of the polished table, Trent positioned protectively beside him. I sat across from them both, my phone face down on the table. A thick folder of documents beside it. Vincent took his seat at the opposite end, a laptop positioned in front of him. Trent began the meeting with smooth, practiced confidence. "Dad, Vincent, thank you for making time for this important discussion. We're here today to protect Dad's finances and his future. I've been looking at the accounts, reviewing the bills, and honestly, we need to make immediate changes before things deteriorate further." He didn't look at me as he spoke, addressing only Dad and Vincent like I wasn't worth acknowledging. "I'm prepared to take over complete financial management. Monica's done her best, but clearly it's too much for her. Women of a certain age, especially without life partners or children, They struggle with complex responsibilities. It's not her fault. It's just reality. Dad nodded along, trusting every word. That's when Vincent raised his hand politely, the gesture simple but commanding. Before we continue with any changes, he said calmly, I have some questions that need answering first. He turned his laptop screen toward Trent with deliberate slowness. The image was paused on a crystal-clear still frame. Trent sitting on Dad's bedroom floor, hands full of cash, Kyle and Jake visible in the background counting their own shares. The timestamp showed clearly in the corner. 2:14 p.m., 3 weeks earlier. Trent's face drained of all color in an instant. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hands, which had been gesturing confidently seconds before, froze in midair. I'd like you to explain this, Vincent continued in that same calm, professional tone. This is from security footage taken in your father's bedroom, the security system you recommended, which Monica installed. Dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen with growing confusion. What is that? What am I looking at? Trent found his voice, though it came out strangled and desperate. Dad, I was just organizing some money for you. This is being taken completely out of context. Vincent's hand moved to the touchpad with theatrical precision. Then let me provide full context, he said and clicked play. The audio filled the conference room with devastating clarity. Kyle's voice came through the laptop speakers first, casual and relaxed. Dude, $800 just sitting there. They'll never know it's missing. Then Trent's laugh, casual and cruel and absolutely damning. Old people don't track anything. Dad forgets what he had for breakfast. You think he's counting his cash? On screen, they divided the money into 3 neat piles, each taking several $100s. Jake's nervous voice, what if your sister notices? Trent's confident response made Dad's hands begin to shake on the table. Monica, she's a 48-year-old woman still living with Daddy, obviously failed at life. Dad won't believe her over me. Kyle's laughter. Truth. Women can't handle pressure. That's why they need men to manage the real stuff. Dad's breathing quickened as he watched his son counting stolen money on the screen. Is that my money? He whispered. From my bedroom? Trent lunged forward like he could somehow stop the video or explain it away. His professional veneer completely shattered. Dad, wait. I can explain this. I was borrowing it temporarily. I had some debts, some poker losses. I was going to pay it back before you even noticed. His voice climbed higher with desperation. This is being blown out of proportion. It was maybe $800, maybe $1,000. It's not that serious. Vincent paused the video with another deliberate click. Borrowing requires permission. This appears to be theft, and you seem uncertain about the amount. He pulled out a document folder with theatrical precision. I have a signed statement from Kyle Brennan, one of the individuals in this video. He's been very forthcoming about the scope of this operation. He slid the paper across the table slowly, letting it come to rest directly in front of Trent. The silence in the room was absolute, except for Dad's increasingly rapid breathing. I watched Trent's face as he read Kyle's confession. Watched the color drain further as reality set in. His friend had betrayed him, his careful plan was unraveling, and his father was watching it all happen in real time. Kyle's statement was brutally detailed. In careful, legally precise language, he described 17 separate instances over 6 months of taking cash from Dad's house, always at Trent's invitation and explicit instruction. He outlined specific amounts, specific dates, and specific conversations where Trent had said the money belonged to Dad but wouldn't be missed because the old man's brain is going. The total came to $14,347. Kyle had kept his own records, probably to protect himself if things went wrong. Trent's face went from pale to red as rage replaced shock. Kyle's a lying piece of trash. He's trying to save himself. His fist hit the table hard enough to make Dad jump. Vincent placed bank statements next to the confession with mathematical precision. These are your father's account records for the past 8 months. Notice the pattern of cash withdrawals matching the dates Kyle provided? Notice how they correspond exactly with the timestamps on 17 separate security videos. He looked at Trent with professional coldness. 17 documented instances of theft. Your friend's confession? Your own voice on multiple recordings. Dad stared at the papers, his hands trembling as he traced the numbers with one finger. The withdrawals were highlighted in yellow: 800 here, 1,200 there, 2,000 from the safe, 1,500 from the dresser. A methodical pattern of theft spread over months. Finally, he looked up at Trent with tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "You told me Monica did this to me," he said, his voice cracking. "You said she was incompetent, that she couldn't handle being a woman alone at her age." Trent grabbed Dad's arm desperately, all pretense of control gone. "It was temporary, Dad. I needed help with some debts. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. You know I love you. I'd never really hurt you." Dad pulled his arm away like Trent's touch burned him. "You blamed your sister. You made me think she was stealing from me. You made me doubt the daughter who gave up everything to take care of me." His voice grew stronger with each sentence. "You told everyone she was having a breakdown. You said women her age can't handle stress." Trent shifted tactics again with the desperation of a cornered animal, pointing at me with wild, frantic gestures. "She wanted me to look bad. This whole thing is her setup. Those cameras are illegal. She was spying on Dad's bedroom." His voice climbed to nearly a shout. "This is entrapment. She baited me." Vincent interrupted smoothly, his tone unchanged. "The cameras were installed with your father's written consent for security purposes. They're perfectly legal. You actually recommended them, according to the documentation." He turned to another video file with a few clicks. "This footage is from 1 week ago. Let's add some additional context." He hit play. Trent's voice filled the room again, this time in a different conversation. "If Dad hands over the accounts to me, I'll fix everything before she ruins it. Then we can really access the big money. Dad's got $180,000 in savings alone." Jake's whistle. Kyle's voice. "What if Monica finds out?" Trent's response echoed through the conference room. "She won't. And even if she does, who's Dad going to believe? His son who's successful, or his spinster daughter who never managed to get her own life together?" But the truly damning part came next, and I watched Dad's face as he heard it. On the video, Trent leaned back against Dad's dresser, completely relaxed and confident. "Honestly, I thought I'd inherit anyway eventually. Why not start early?" Jake's nervous laugh. "That's cold, man. He's your father." Trent's shrug came through clearly in the audio. "Dad won't remember any of this in a few years. Might as well use the money while it's still accessible. Old man won't last long anyway, and Monica's too stupid to figure it out. Women get emotional, not analytical." Dad gasped like he'd been physically struck. The sound was small and wounded, and it broke something fundamental in the room. He pushed his chair back from the table, standing on shaky legs. Vincent moved to help him, but Dad waved him off with surprising firmness. He stared at Trent for a long moment, and I watched my brother realize that his entire world was collapsing. "How long?" Dad asked, his voice cracking but clear. "How long have you been stealing from your own father while telling everyone your sister was incompetent?" Trent reached out desperately. "Dad, please." But Dad recoiled from his touch like it was poison. "I trusted you," Dad whispered, and the words carried more weight than any shout. "I believed every word you said. You made me doubt Monica, the daughter who sacrificed her career, her apartment, her whole life to take care of me. And you used me. You counted my money with your friends and laughed about how I'm too old to notice." Tears rolled down his cheeks freely now. "You said I won't last long. You said Monica failed at life because she's unmarried. You said women can't think analytically." His voice grew stronger with each accusation. "And I believed you when you said she was the problem." Dad moved around the table slowly, his steps uncertain but determined. He sat down in the empty chair beside me instead of returning to his spot next to Trent. The gesture was small but absolutely devastating. Trent watched his father choose sides, and for the first time real fear crossed his features. "Dad, please, you don't understand the whole situation. I was under pressure. I made mistakes, but I'm still your son." Vincent cleared his throat with finality. "I think we understand perfectly. The evidence is comprehensive." What happened to Trent? How did Monica rebuild her life? Find out in part 2.